Anonymous asks a question about nostalgia. Have Rand, Saws, or any of the other big thinkers anything to say on nostalgia? I've never been much for it, but as I have faced a rough half a year on a couple of fronts, personal as well as business, I have developed a strong nostalgia for the 80s and 90s. I understand it means some sort of yearning for a better past. Do you have anything to say on why so many people get nostalgic when they grow up? Why, when, and how to not get stuck in it? I think it is bad because it can take away one's focus of today and the future. Is it because we are not happy with where we are today? So I agree that it's generally bad, but not entirely bad. It's good to be introspective and to think about your life and your past, and more so recent things. Like, you had a conversation yesterday. What could you have said differently so it would have turned out more to your liking? Rethinking, replaying in your head that kind of conversation is a good thing. It's how you learn to do better next time. And considering things from further in your past is a similar kind of activity, but you should be doing less of it. Like, the further back in time it goes, in general, then you should be giving it less thought. To the point where it's often zero thought unless it was particularly important. Like, if it's more than a month old and it's not important, then you probably shouldn't be thinking about it anymore. Okay, and then another tangential comment about nostalgia is it helped sell a very bad book called Ready Player One. And in the podcast description, I will put a link to a very extensive review of that book, which I thought was a very high quality review. A lot of research and effort went into it. It's very long. And I thought it was good, the review. It was a lot of detailed analysis, and it's it's not from a philosopher. He's not an FI poster, so it's like a different kind of person, but still doing good work of the type of, and it's kind of the kind of thing that FI would like to do, like textual analysis, understanding the details. There's a lot of criticism. He catches the author in contradictions and plot holes and stuff. So that's nice. It's on a free speech forum where you can say naughty things that SJWs would not approve of. And so it's nice that good forums exist with good content. It's not a perfect forum by any means, but I'm happy it exists, and there's a decent amount of decent quality stuff there. Contrary to people's belief that if you're allowed to say mean things or mean words, then clearly everyone must be stupid and all their ideas must be wrong or whatever, you know? People can be like rude to each other while actually making good points. And by contrast, you see a lot of discussions where people are being all polite to each other while making terrible points and no one's calling each other out on anything. Anyways, I'll link that. So back to nostalgia. I don't recall Rand or Saws saying anything in particular about it, or DD. But the thing I was saying about replaying conversations in your head, I'm pretty sure DD wrote an email praising that and talking about why it was good. I think that was like an old TCS email or something. I forgot where it was from. But I believe he did that. I think a lot of nostalgia is because people are bad at updating their preferences. So they form preferences like when they're teenagers or young adults, and then they just never change them a lot. And then the world changes, the culture changes, so they become out of date. And you see this like with fashion, where people are wearing clothes that are 10, 20, 30 years out of date because they didn't update. And, that's not a big deal. Who cares if you're not looking fashionable? Like, unless you're trying to look fashionable, it's okay. But if your preferences for movies, TV shows, music, etc. get really out of date, then it's awkward because you have to find old stuff. You don't get to enjoy the new stuff. So that's why you get like nostalgic, or it's a reason. Because you're finding that there's all this new stuff being created that you don't like, but you remember liking this old stuff. So you want more of the old stuff that's like what you already like, because you're not appreciating the new stuff. To some extent that can be your fault because you're failing to learn what's good about the new stuff. You're not putting effort into understanding it. Your thinking is stagnant, so you're not seeing the value in the new things. But also, sometimes there can be downward trends, and so the older stuff can actually be better. On average, worldwide, things are getting better, not worse, so things trend upwards on average. But for any particular area, like music or movies or something, it's totally possible for there to be downward trends for years or decades even. Especially for like certain aspects of them. Like, one example in gaming, when 3D games came out, they got a lot of attention and development effort. And they have some advantages over 2D games, and they also have some disadvantages. And so there was a period of time where not enough 2D games were being made, and not enough effort was going into 2D gaming. And 3D games are definitely not strictly better. So there ought to be effort into 2D and 3D. And I think there is now. Mobile has helped it, and indie development has helped it. And 2D games tend to be easier to make. And they tend to be more suited for certain types of games, like strategy games. But there are other reasons to have them. Anyways, so I think there was maybe a period of 10 years where 2D games were getting underserved, and that has improved lately. Another trend in gaming is it's gotten more and more mainstream, which has resulted in games being easier and easier. And so nostalgia for games that were actually hard enough makes sense. And there are certainly good players who play primarily old games because they don't like how it's been dumbed down to make it easy enough for the masses of stupid people to succeed without much thought. Because a lot of people don't want to think, but collectively they have more money than the people who do want to think. So when gaming was for like the early adopters in the computer industry, it was harder. And it was also because back then games were a lot smaller, and so by making them hard, they would make them longer. But nowadays, they're pandering to the mainstream, not the early adopters, and they're able to make big, long games. They don't need difficulty to stretch out the time it takes to finish the game. And so a lot of games really suck now. Not all of them, there's some good games, and there's a variety. And I think overall things are better, but there's definitely some major downward trends. And so downward trends can cause like nostalgia, especially when you don't understand what's going on. You just sort of vaguely know that you liked something better about some of the past stuff. Nostalgia can be more suspect when it's not about a specific thing. If you just like certain old games, maybe not a big worry, probably fine. And the same if you like some specific old movies or music or something, or old clothes, probably not a big concern. But if it's just sort of generally remembering the past fondly and sort of wishing you were living in the past and not liking your current life in general, rather than just having specific complaints about specific products, then maybe you have more of a problem. Especially if you're unhappy now and you just like wish you were in a better situation, or if you want like a do-over on part of your life, if you regret some of your choices, so you like fondly remember before you made those choices that you regret. Those kinds of things can be bad. Like you need to make your current life good and focus most of your thinking on your current situation, and living a life that you like and you're happy with and whatever, and solve your problems. Like you don't want to escape from your problems and ignore them. You want to actually solve them and do something about them.